Good afternoon, everybody. Friends, welcome back to ESIC's webinar series. This is the last event for this year. This is the fourth edition, so we have a certain experience in how to help students and scholars in getting involved in deepening the great value of environmental sustainability in the international cooperation stage. So welcome everybody, even to the around 20 students connected by internet. We have the pleasure in this night to introduce another very interesting topic, the role of nature-based solutions in the sustainable cities. I remember that we will also speak about the experience of UNESCO chair for in engineering for human and sustainable development in these issues, and the experience, especially the experience of the course in the Master of Science degree on nature-based solution for urban sustainability. So a great opportunity to get involved in this matter. The first speaker, we have the pleasure to also to tonight is Mario Balzan. Applied ecologists in this such as matters, engaged in the island of Malta, but all around the world, let's say, in how to combine the added value of biodiversity and ecosystem services to human well-being and vice versa. And Mario, you have the floor. I want to cap my talk because you have to leave very early. So please.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me a second, please. Okay, can I just check with you that you see my screen, my full screen?
Good.
Okay, thank you. So yes, thank you very much for the invite. And I've been asked to talk about nature-based solutions in Mediterranean cities. Now, of course, I haven't been to all Mediterranean cities or haven't seen all Mediterranean cities or worked in them. So I'd like to present you my experience with nature-based solutions in Mediterranean cities I've worked with. And I, as was said in the introduction, I come from the island of Malta. Maybe some of you have been there. It's a very dense island, so very urbanized, becoming even more urbanized. And you have a cultural center. At the same time, you have also a place of history and culture, but at the same time also rapid development, as can be seen in this contrast in these two photos. So in one of them, you have one of the most important touristic areas, which is the top one, where there's the hotels and most of the development. And then the second one, that's Valletta, the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a green space, a green roof, and on one of the public buildings, representing possibly what could be nature-based solutions. But we'll talk a bit about that. So there's a lot of interest in nature-based solutions, and I'm going to show you a few photos from where I work. And when I look at these photos, I see some green. I see a lot of well, some green and some gray, at least. And why is this happening? Well, there is we value nature. We value nature. We want to have it close to us. It's important for us. And we think that it leads to benefits to human well-being and potentially also to other living organisms. But essentially, our politicians, our decision makers focus on nature because it gives us a certain number of benefits. So if we look at this from an SDG perspective, it's the biosphere supporting society and the economy. And however, there are a number of questions which I'd like to pose and share with you, and which sort of has been the focus of my research over the past years. And that's one of them is, are these really nature-based solutions? Do these really contribute to benefits to biodiversity and to well-being? And are these the most effective nature-based interventions or nature-based solutions? Could we have done something different which would have led to even greater benefits to biodiversity and to well-being? So I have divided my presentation in three, and the first part is about assessing benefits. If we want to talk about how effective these nature-based solutions are, we need to look at the context in which they are applied. We need to look at the need for these benefits, first of all. So what is the spatial distribution of these benefits and who is benefiting from these nature-based solutions? So I'm going to start with an example of a case study. So it's a Mediterranean city for me. It's an island of the island of Malta. It's a place which is highly with this high urban density, especially if you look close to the Grand Harbor area. So that would be here. This is quite a historic place. So this is Valletta, and here you would find around, well, I'm not sure, I think around 30% of the population. So a very dense place. You have some cities here where the population density is around close to 20,000, so 18, 19,000 people per square kilometer. Lots of not loads of green space, not loads of nature, but actually very much an urban place. Average population density, however, is around 1,400, and that's the highest in Europe. And there's, of course, a strong tourism pressure as well. So population is around 500,000 people, but 3 million tourists per year are there. So that's quite an amount, and of course that leads to impacts on biodiversity. It has impacts on our access to green space. And this work started some years ago. So we were in a Horizon 2020 project as Esmeralda, which some of my colleagues from the University of Trento were in. So it was co-led also with Professor Gianelletti and his team. And we were a case study in this work, and we started developing indicators to look at the distribution of ecosystem services. And these were some of the first studies. We started to realize that actually much of the capacity to provide services is outside the city. So, and then we developed some indicators. So ecosystem service capacity, okay, was very much correlated with what we defined as being green infrastructure, but then green infrastructure was not available where people live. So population density was negatively related to the availability of green infrastructure and vice versa. And however, when we started looking at sort of the use of nature, I mean, the rate at which nature or ecosystem services are used, their flow, we started to realize that actually, if you are close to the city, and here is the blank areas are actually the cities, the urban areas, you start seeing darker blue colors. Why? Because the rate of ecosystem service use is much higher. So although there's much less capacity to provide service, the flow is, of course, higher. Why? Because in this case, we're talking about removal of air pollutants. You would find higher level of pollution within the city. So therefore, there is higher removal of pollutants within the city. And then we did this for several services. And what we started finding was that basically cities play a very important role. This is an app, geocaching. It's a treasure hunt. Maybe you've played this. It used to be quite popular. I'm not sure if it still is, but basically it's a treasure hunt. So someone would hide these treasures and people would go and look for these treasures and rate their experience. So we've used this app and have seen how it compares to the different types of land uses. And as you can see, in many cases, urban, green and leisure areas were marked as the favorite points for this recreational activity. We did some more work with my colleague, this has been published now, with my colleague Laura Costadone from Italy, but works in the US. And we used iNaturalist and Flickr to assess nature-based recreation and nature-based tourism activities. And again, you will realize that this is the same hotspot that we have seen before. Cities play a very important role in providing benefits to communities. A lot of the tourists are actually going to other places, but most of the time they interact with nature is actually happening in the cities themselves. Okay, so you don't have the map of the cities here, but here you will remember this was I was mentioning that this had the highest urban density, and therefore it's very interesting to observe that even though there's much less nature, you will find much less people much more photos of people in nature in the city, even though the availability is so low. And then we plotted this with various models, but this is a PCA with 3 axes, and you can see how both Flickr photos and iNaturalist were quite well related to the urban land cover. We were involved in a couple of European projects. This is work for the European Commission, where we were asked to map urban ecosystem services. And again, one of the problems we had is actually how to deal with the availability of data, especially when you're dealing with small, high densities. But we've managed to map ecosystem services with the planning authority, and we developed different indicators. So one of them is actually effectiveness. But before that, I'd like to discuss basically the link between tree cover and regulating ecosystem services. In a treeless place like Malta, you can see here, it's quite white, okay, not a lot of trees. Trees made a big difference. So in many cases, they were strongly related with the indicators that we have used for regulating ecosystem services. Because space is quite limited, we said, what if you would like to increase the capacity of ecosystem services in cities, but with very low space availability? And we developed an index of effectiveness, which looks at how much ecosystem service capacity you have per unit area. And what we found is that private gardens, for example, were 4 times more effective when compared to, where is it? Public gardens. Okay, it's here. So public gardens are around 1 and private gardens are around 4. So, and of course, there's variation. Some spaces are more important in terms of ecosystem service capacity per unit area. And we found that this is also linked to the ownership of the land. So this was quite an interesting result. And however, when you consider a wider range of ecosystem services, you consider, for example, the cultural services, you start seeing how there is variation in the use of nature for different things. So these are, I'm not sure if you can see this well on your screen, but on the arrows represent different types of cultural ecosystem services. And in gray, I'm not sure if you can see this, in gray you have the different types of green spaces. And there was some variation in the use of these spaces for different activities. Is it a spiritual activity or is it a recreational activity? There seemed to be this variation. So although we mentioned trees as being very important, right? We also mentioned that the nature itself of that green space or that green space within the city is very important because it can provide other benefits. Well, I was mentioning before the importance of private space, and one thing which came up is who is actually benefiting if space is so limited. And private gardens, for example, are so effective at leading to benefits to communities. Who is benefiting from these services and from these green spaces? And we developed this as a correlation matrix. So blue means positively correlated to distance from green space, and brown is negatively correlated. And one thing that you can see is that people who are inactive, with illness, no schooling, with primary and secondary education and in elementary occupations seem to live far away from places having local climate regulation services, aesthetics, health, inspiration, sense of place, and their quality and other things. And this was quite distinct. So all these people who are at a relative disadvantage were all positively correlated to distance. So they lived further away from green spaces, which are effective at providing these services. This happens independently of population density. So population density is also related to ecosystem services, but ecosystem service capacity, but it is in a separate cluster shown here with this box. Okay, and you can see how on the opposite, people with university education who are professionals and managers, for example, as opposed to elementary occupations, seem to live closer to green spaces, which are more effective at providing these ecosystem services. So this study dealt with the distributive element of social justice. But of course, there's more to say on this. So we're just scratching the surface here because of If people live further away from green spaces or from green spaces which are effective, they are also not very much involved in decision making relating to that green space, or use that green space so much. So there's other dimensions of social justice that we have not tackled in this study. And here I would like to start talking a bit about nature-based solutions. So this is how the IUCN defines nature-based solutions. So they are actions that are using nature or inspired by nature, and protect nature, sustainably manage nature to address societal challenges. And you can see here a number of societal challenges, including water availability and drought, climate change, green jobs, and so on. The European Commission also has its own framework and definition looking at nature-based solutions and identifying other societal challenges. But the key point here is that we are using nature. We are adopting ecosystem-based approaches to address societal challenges while giving benefits to human well-being and to biodiversity. And this is very much common in all the different definitions of nature-based solutions, or at least the most common definitions. A few photos, not my photos, of different nature-based solutions, not my photos and not from Malta, and also a number of photos about then, a diagram about the sort of benefits, the ecosystem service associated with urban nature-based solutions or urban green spaces or urban green infrastructure. So this takes me to a project which I was leading until a few years ago. It's called Renature. University of Trento was again in this project, and with a colleague, Professor Gianelletti. And what we started to do is we started asking people to provide us with case studies of nature-based solutions. At first, we started doing this for Malta, where I was the coordinator of the project. But then we opened this more widely to the community, to people across the Mediterranean, and we asked them to submit case studies of nature-based solutions using a template which we shared with them. This is still online, so you can go there. It looks like this, but of course there is a data set behind this website. And we classified different types of nature-based solutions into these 5 categories: building scale, public spaces, water bodies, transport infrastructure, natural areas and land management, education and participation. And we asked them, well, which societal challenges have you been addressing through nature-based solutions? And we've done this for Malta, but also we've done this at Mediterranean scale using the case studies. And one thing which comes up is actually that there's a lot of yellow in this figure. This is a heat map, and it shows how nature-based solutions are often used to address a smaller range of challenges than that you would normally find in literature. And in our case here, they were mostly related to natural areas and land management. So you see that there are a number of gaps. Which are the benefits, okay, that you associate with nature-based solutions? Again, you see that there's a lot of focus on green infrastructure quality, biodiversity, ecological restoration, air quality. But for example, not a lot of focus on green jobs or ownership or the health benefits or the aesthetics, and so on. So there was a number of gaps. And this applied both for the Maltese case study and also more widely to the case studies from the Mediterranean, which are the SDGs that you address through nature-based solutions. And you will see how only few SDGs were being addressed. So a lot of these are actually not addressed in our case studies of nature-based solutions. So certainly a lot of gaps in the implementation of nature-based solutions. So then we did a more detailed study with stakeholders. We asked them about the enablers and barriers to nature-based solutions. And we developed this analysis. Basically, if it's a cross here, it means it is a barrier. If it's a tick sign, it's positive, and it's an enabler. And you can see how, when it comes to the perceptions of people or organizations, there are a lot of barriers related to public awareness, barriers related to understanding how to exactly carry out this project, and realizing this project. So there are a lot of barriers when it comes to perception. People do not know exactly how to address nature-based solutions. And then when it comes to institutions, so organization, these elements come from this framework by this Anderson et al. published in Ecology and Society. Our paper is published here, and there's all the references there. Again, there's a few enablers as well, but quite a few barriers. So in general, there is an interest, for example, by businesses. There is some interest to work in interdisciplinary teams involving different departments, government departments, businesses, and so on. Okay, there's research and innovation, which is helping. There's guidance at regional scale, coming, for example, from the EU or the IUCN. But often, then when you go to the local scale, we don't know a lot of things. We don't know about the costs and the benefits. Institutions might not have the capacity to actually plan a nature-based solution or to mobilize resources, or they don't often work in interdisciplinary teams. And therefore there's a lack of cooperation, and there's also a lack of monitoring and standards. Again, lots of barriers when you look at the infrastructure. So these were all identified by our stakeholders. There's limited space for nature-based solutions. There's few positive examples at the local scale rather than at EU scale or regional scale. You would find compendia or repositories like I was mentioning before. But then when you go to the very local scale where people are working, there's not a lot of case studies. And also lack of terms of reference of projects, including nature-based solutions, and some mentioned the services which you could have from nature-based solutions, and also then from a Mediterranean perspective, we are accustomed to seeing these nice green urban nature-based solutions in cities, but in a Mediterranean climate, maybe we should also be talking about brown nature-based solutions, where I live in Malta, it's already quite brown because everything is drying out because it hasn't rained for a few months, I would say, or probably. So addressing the challenges, and here I would like to refer to this paper. So using the studies that we have been doing and collaborating with Professor Gianelletti, with Davide Longato from the University of Trento, former PhD student of the University of Trento. We've looked at the demand for ecosystem services within the same study area. And based on this, Davide Longato in this case, was leading the study, identified nature-based solutions that could address some of the ecosystem service demands that we have in this highly dense urban area. This was a paper which was published in Landscape and Urban Planning. So what are we doing? So this kind of work, of course, helps. Doing an assessment of the availability of green space, of mapping and assessing ecosystems and the services is very important. It helps you to plan, as Davide Longato has done here. But also we're looking at capacity building. So we cannot look at this problem of developing and mainstreaming nature-based solutions only from a technical perspective. It's also about bringing people together, because some of the challenges that I was mentioning, like people not working in interdisciplinary teams, lack of awareness, cannot be addressed simply from a technical perspective. And here I would like to mention this project which I was leading, which I mentioned before, and which try to break down these barriers using a number of methods. Technological approach, so collecting data, ecosystem service assessment, biodiversity assessment, but also then the involvement of stakeholders, the sharing of expertise, the sharing of experiences and sharing of projects, and then also developing toolkits which are meant to bring people together and have people test different things out. So this is a project where we try to address these barriers through capacity building. Maybe you see some friends here. So we did capacity building activities. We have held summer schools for PhD students and young researchers. I think we've trained around 500 people on nature-based solutions. We developed knowledge synthesis, looking at where the gaps are for nature-based solutions and nature-based solutions implementation in cities. And we developed also a cluster. I think this is quite important. Another example of where we're tackling nature-based solutions from a community, from a place-making perspective, is this work which we have done in Sanglia. Sanglia, also called Isla, is in the south of Malta, so on the opposite end to Valletta and the Grand Harbor. It's a very historic place. It's a very dense place. It's one of the densest places in Malta, and also has a relatively high level of people suffering from a number of disadvantages because of the history and the development of the place. And so with a number of partners, we had this place-making project, and we worked with the community to bring back well, nature to the city, but not essentially focusing on nature, focusing on everything else rather than nature. So we did painting activities, we did bioblids activities, so still linked to nature, and we spoke with the residents. We had them, what do you really want to see? We had art sessions then to make the place brighter and more beautiful. But also they said, listen, there is the square which is very gray. You can see it here. This is great. It's really gray. It's not just gray infrastructure. It's also gray in color. And we'd like to do something there. And then discussing with them, we developed a nice pop-up park, which should have been there for just 2 weeks, but is still there 2 years after the project. So it shows how when you engage with the community, maybe it's not the perfect example of nature-based solution, but it's still something compared to the baseline, which was basically a square with gray tiles. So what it shows that when you work with a community, you can manage to bring change. In a climate like Malta, those plants would not survive there for very long. So it obviously means that now we have a community which is taking care of this place. It means someone from the neighborhood who's going there and watering the plants. So it means engagement of the community and which stays there. We developed then sub-learning outcomes. And my conclusion basically is there is an interest in growing cities, but there's also a lot of gaps, lots of challenges, and lots of opportunities. I think that, as I was saying, there's need for measurements of effectiveness. How effective are these nature-based solutions? How well are they leading to benefits to biodiversity? How well are they leading to benefits to ecosystem service capacities and flows? So addressing the demand that there is for these ecosystem services by the community, and how much are they leading to the well-being? So there's a lot of work going on in research on these, but maybe we're not always leading to actual practical implementation at the required scale at the scale of implementation. Often projects are quite small, not measuring everything, so there's a lot of gaps which need to be addressed. And I have shown how, especially in the last part of the presentation, how through various projects, there's more projects I haven't mentioned because time does not allow. For example, in other projects, we're looking at biodiversity monitoring in these green spaces. Does it really lead to benefits, and how does the configuration of plants, for example, leads to benefits to pollinators? So there's a lot of work which needs to be done to understand exactly how effective we are in terms of this implementation, and is it something that is sort of relevant and important to do? Otherwise we are really spending lots of tax money and doing something which is not effective, or not as effective as it could be. And with that, I share with you some photos of our events and our training activities, and that's it. Thank you very much. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Mario, so much for introducing the first of the two contexts we will compare tonight, the Mediterranean cities. In a very crowded context, if you consider that Italy has an average of high density, 200 people for square kilometer, more or less, and you were speaking about 1,400, if I well remember. So a great pressure on the ecosystems context. Given your need to run away, I would like to ask whether you are interested in some specific question or some comments or remarks before leaving Mario.
I'm happy to take a couple of questions. I think I have around 8 minutes before.
You are right. Okay. So quickly. Nobody? Okay, we will collect some questions in sending you afterwards, I presume. Before passing the microphone to Susanna, I would like to retake on hand the topic of the didactic offer of our department, especially in terms of nature-based solution applied in the context of international cooperation. I'm looking for Yarumi. Okay, you are
Yes, I'm here.
to give witnesses about this experience in learning. One of the unique experiences in all the rounds of Italy offer, academic offer, so very precious. Please, Jeremy.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mario, for your presentation, and hi, I couldn't say hi earlier. So, and also we would like to thank the seminar organizers for giving us the space to say a few words on this course. So basically, we would like to take this opportunity to inform all of you that are interested in this topic of nature-based solutions that actually Professor Davide Geneletti and I are offering a course on nature-based solutions for urban sustainability as part of the master's programs in environmental engineering. And basically, this course covers many of the themes that were discussed today, including the evolution of the nature-based solutions concept, the principal classifications. We are also going to address the issues of environmental justice that are linked, let's say, to the implementation of NBS, and of course, also the functioning of these solutions in providing ecosystem services that help us to address most of the most important social challenges that were already presented in Mario's slides. So basically, to facilitate the understanding on these topics, we have designed a range of activities that include field visits, but also very extensive GIS modeling sessions. And for example, in terms of modeling, we are going to explore both the supply of ecosystem services that are provided by nature-based solutions, but also the demand for such services. And this is basically very important because we're trying to make students understand how could we actually prioritize nature-based solutions where these are more needed from, let's say, a planning perspective. So this is basically a brief summary of how the course is working. And if anyone is interested in joining this course, or if you would like to have more information on how it works, please feel free to email either Davide or myself, and we would be super happy to also answer any questions that you have. And you can also ask for our contact to Marta, and I can write it here in the chat. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And attending to the course, you will be happy like Yarumi. It's not a spot. And really, it's open not only to engineer, but increasing your knowledge and experience, given the large experience also by Davide Geneletti, my colleague. Now it's time to introduce the second host and guest, because you are covering both the roles. I'm particularly proud to say that it's a former student of mine and of our courses, and with a significant experience in a different country and different context, Mozambique. We will speak about that country, but first of all, I can introduce also your profile, because you are a field researcher. And research fellow means that you are engaged in exploring new fields of application of the science. And it's quite interesting to know that the natural-based solutions are the typical field in which science policy interface is a very significant collaboration in order to transform life of people, like Mario said us. And you will speak about the nature-based solution applied to urban flooding in terms of adaptation and prevention, risk management. This is the typical multidisciplinary approach, and co-design in a completely different settlement. It's a spontaneous, informal settlement, not well organized, not under the European law context. So tell us about that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo, for this kind introduction, and thank you also to Professor Balzan and Yarumi. I'll try to share my screen. First of all. So, yes, here I am for, okay. So good afternoon, everybody. as Massimo said, I'm Susanna Ottaviani, a research fellow here at DICAM in Mesiano. First of all, I would like to say that I'm here presenting the project I work on because we, as the organizing committee of these ESIC seminars, thought that these seminars are really a precious opportunity to also share and show what we young researchers are doing in the UNESCO chair in engineering for human and sustainable development. And now I can start with my topic. So I'm going to tell you something about a case study in Mozambique where a multidisciplinary approach and for the assessment and co-design of nature-based solution for urban flooding adaptation has been carried out. I will start by saying, if my presentation works. Yes, by saying that urbanization has been rapidly increasing worldwide. By 2050, 6.3 billion people are expected to live in urban areas, and this population growth is thought to be faster in sub-Saharan African countries, and Mozambique is one of them. Mozambique is a country located in Southeast Africa, facing the Indian Ocean on the east, and is now counting almost 33 million people with a share of urban population around 38%. If we zoom in the map of Mozambique, we find the city of Beira, which occupies a central position both in terms of latitude and economy. Beira, after the independence from Portugal, which occurred in 1975, experienced a big expansion, but since then, since the 70s, no major expansion of the infrastructural network have occurred, and so as a result, many areas of the city lacks in basic infrastructure and services. This is a big issue that the municipality is facing, and among the maybe okay. I forgot to switch this microphone on. So as I was saying, one of the big issues the municipality is facing is that guaranteeing all its citizens with the right of living in a safe environment. Among the tools and possibilities of the municipality, there is a project that is called MUDAR, which among its pillars as one of its objectives is to implement a pilot project for the urban regeneration and requalification, and is where also the University of Trento is involved in. And then the area targeted for this pilot project is the neighborhood called Makuti that you can see here in the orange box. Makuti is a neighborhood of about 70,000 inhabitants spread in 220 hectares, who experienced internal migration in the last 20 years, as you may see on the map on your right hand side, where we can see that in the last 20 years the population grew rapidly, starting from the formal, or what we used to call formal, the residential area facing the coast, characterized by these lines that are the road infrastructure, slowly occupying, not that slowly, occupying all the space available till reaching the drainage channel which separate the Makuti neighborhood from the upper one. And maybe if I do this, you can see also. So how do we assess this informal settlement that is facing some big challenges because of lack of urban planning? We thought to assess it with an integrated and multidisciplinary approach, with the spreading, for example, of 800 questionnaires and 200 interviews to inhabitants, stakeholders, and professionals. We collected all the existing, the available existing spatial information from the local authorities. We performed an expert-based identification with Google Earth Pro, so through satellite images, and we did some validation of qualitative and quantitative data sets with in-situ measurements. Then we merged all these data sets in a GIS platform, and I'd like to show now some of the results that helped me to explain what Makuti looks like. So 75% of the inhabitants illegally take water from cut pipes coming from the aqueduct that are serving the neighborhood that is the upper neighborhood. So people in the center of who live here in the informal or spontaneous area can't have access, direct access to drinking water. 63% of inhabitants have a single pit, which means that probably the water, there's a groundwater contamination with the outspread also of some diseases such as cholera. And as you can see here, the sewage line is serving just the formal area, whereas the innermost part of the neighborhood hasn't access to the sewage. And lack of infrastructure means also lack of street because of lack of urban planning. So it's very difficult for vehicles to reach the innermost part of the neighborhood. So when I'm talking about vehicles, I mean cars, of course, but also ambulances, but also firemen, and of course, waste truck. As a result, people living in a spontaneous settlement, usually the vast majority of them bury the waste in the backyard, burn them, or they dispose in uncontrolled waste disposal, and that we try to map, but it was a tough work to do because there are plenty of them, and they are, you can see here, marked with the orange square. Last but not least, we tried to assess the flood and the drainage system. People living in the municipal unit E, here in the most northern part of the neighborhood, experiences frequent floodings almost every year, and water can reach 1.5 meter high. So why this occur? Because actually the coastal area of Makuti has a higher elevation compared to the innermost part of the neighborhood, and the coastal area we find here a sandy soil, whereas in the innermost part of the neighborhood there's a clayey soil with which has an infiltration rate that is very low. Then, looking at the flow direction that I can't see, but this configuration conveys the water inwards, and these areas are not connected to the drainage system. As a result, people experience heavy flooding, and this problem is likely to worsen because if it's true that the precipitation remains quite constant, as we saw in the last 20 years, the number of rainy days is decreasing. As a result, there's an intensification of rainfalls. So once we elaborated and collected all this information, we try to we present to the local administration and to the population for also a validation, and then we and a participatory process for drafting some solution has started. And this participatory process was led by a technical group made of 2 technicians from the municipality, 2 researchers of the University of Trento, and 2 engineers from the implementing partner. This technical group was accompanied for 4 months by 3 committees, the municipal one, the youth one, and the local one, to find best solution to address those constraints that emerged in the assessment phase. As a result, we drafted a pilot project that is made of modules, all centered in the core area of Makuti. These modules are drafted to be easily replicable, so that in the future they can be implemented also in other areas, critical areas of the neighborhood, according to neighborhood scale project that we also drafted. So what are these modules? We propose to widening and resurfacing of a central road axis to give actual access to the neighborhood, the creation of green spaces and recreational areas, and then the improvement of drainage. Firstly, with doing maintenance of the existing drainage channels that you can see here, that are full of garbage, sediment, but also waste and vegetation. And secondly, we wanted to convey the water accumulating in these areas to the existing drainage channel, not just with some basic channels, but we try to implement some nature-based solution for flood adaptation. We propose to convert these natural prone areas into safe and monitored areas, also to prevent the construction of new buildings in this area that is definitely not suitable for living. And also we wanted to implement something that could help manage the flood risk, but by attenuating and also providing some storage for the runoff. We as University of Trento propose to implement some nature-based solution, also because we in previous study we we saw that in Makuti neighborhood, some locally implemented nature-based solution could be a good response to mitigation the floodings. But what happened is that the other members of this technical group strongly disagree on nature-based solution. Because actually they doubt strongly about the efficiency, and in a context that is characterized by data scarcity, it is difficult to prove that with modeling that something is really maybe working good as maybe with comparable efficiency as gray infrastructure. So process of a debating process section started and lasted for 4 months almost, and at the end we proposed to the municipality 2 options. One and the municipality, who was the final decision maker, one actually decided to implement a detention pond for the first area, this one on the left. Detention pond to facilitate the connection of this flooded area to the existing drainage channel by alternating the peak flow and without changing the land use. This detention pond is a shallow water pond where that is functioning just during the rainy season, and usually can be dry, and used, for example, in the dry season for children to play, as a place to play. And here on your right, you can see what was the output of the project, the executive project. And on this detention pond is connected to a retention basin that is more likely to is more like similar to other infrastructure that are present in the context. That is why it was well received. And this retention basin actually is thought to increase the storage capacity and to convey the water to the existing drainage channel. So, coming to conclusion, we thought that a multidisciplinary methodology was crucial for assessing the situation and assessing the constraints of context characterized by data scarcity, and coupling these methodology with the co-design of, in this case, nature-based solution, really help in tailoring the best solution to the context. And this methodology that here we saw applied to a very specific case can be also applied in several other contexts, also to face a huge and worldwide issue that is living in a spontaneous neighborhood, now home to 1 billion people, and also going towards the 11th SDG, the one on sustainable cities and communities. So thank you. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Very good, Susanna. And because it's an issue of passion before, first of all. And now it's our turn and for comments, questions or proposals. So feel free to intervene. According to your experience, I know there are several other students engaged in nature-based solutions, so please don't be timid. And just come here in order to allow all the participants to hear you. Please come here.
Thank you, Susanna, for your presentation. I mean, how did you manage the problem of waste in a country like, in a party like that, where nature-based solution can become a place of waste disposal? I mean, we have it also here in Italy, apart from green roofs, which are very difficult to throw waste on. I mean, it's a very complicated matter. And I mean, also, how did you engage the municipality to avoid that problem?
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's a really interesting question because actually the waste is of course an issue in Makuti, as in Beira, as in many other cities. Okay, this actually was one of the points in the discussion we had with our colleagues that that wanted strongly to put fences around these areas, and maybe I can show you. So no, I can't. Okay. Okay, yes, here you can see in this scratch that there's a fence, and is one of the things that we didn't want, because this is a highly density area. So we didn't want to create an obstacle, and we wanted to create a solution that was also that could be lived and by the population. Here I was saying that this detention point should be a place that during the dry season can be used by children to play football, as it is now actually. So we didn't want to create this barrier, but of course it's an issue because it is without sensibilization, this area is likely to be another waste disposal site. So we really tried to start from the beginning of the project with sensibilization. Also helped with the youth committee. As you can see here, there are some people with technical stuff to clean and also and to engage the population in trying not dispose waste in places that are not appropriate. But of course, it's easy to say not put, doing sensibilization when people ask you, okay, but where should I put, where should I burn it? Should I bury it in my backyard? So one of the solutions we thought is to, of course, provide the neighborhood with a waste collection that now is lacking. The waste truck stops here, where there's So people have to really walk a lot, like 40 minutes to reach the first waste disposal. And of course, this is something that is not sustainable at all. So with the widening and resurfacing of the central road, we can have access to this area and put some of the waste disposal here. And then we start to capillarly make a collection of waste with other vehicles that are smaller, like bicycles and tuk-tuk that are really common there. So, but it's a challenge, of course. I hope I answered.
Thank you, Susanna. What else? While you are reflecting, I have put some questions. First of all, a curiosity, what is the meaning of the gray area?
Okay. The gray area is the influence of these infrastructure, but actually now and also it's a graphic choice done by the Lamarck group that helped us in developing in producing these images. But the interesting fact is that we are currently doing a comparative study for this pilot project, and we want to compare the situation before the implementation of these works. That is, I think that it's closer here. I think in a month that this work will be actually starting. And so we are trying to compare the situation before this work and the situation after this work, the implementation of these these interventions, and also to assess to what extent these interventions are going. So to which extent they are influencing the neighborhood. So maybe we will find out that the gray area will be wider.
Okay, I'm burning my time because it was just a curiosity. Mm-hmm. My question is about the ownership issue. Mm-hmm. How to improve the sense of ownership by the population, for instance, by encouraging the participation in setting up the infrastructures, maintaining or taking care of the maintenance, enlarging the sensitivity towards the custody of this infrastructure. What was your experience in this?
Okay, we try to work with these committees from the beginning. We try to validate, first of all, the data that we collected and that they preciously, the time they spent to answer, for example, the questions to the questionnaires, and we try to involve them at the early stages of the project by in local assemblies, also to let them know at which stage the project is. But for the ownership, we rely on the youth committee. That is that it was a youth association that it was previously working on the neighborhood, and we set some events on which they can do some sensibilization also, and they are carrying out, for example, some activities. For example, we want now to do this massive planting of trees in the neighborhood. They are taking actually care of the plants we bought. So at the time that we will plant them in the neighborhood, somebody, I mean, I think that we'd like that this sense of ownership also will work, we hope.
It will be increasing.
Yes.
With time. Okay, thank you. Any comments? Are you satisfied or not? Please, feel free to intervene. For instance, may I ask you how many of us are interested in some training experiences in the field, for instance, in the future, or who has a past? Nobody? So, in the audience, of course, connected online. And meanwhile, I want to thank particularly Marta Crivellaro, that is the official presenter and moderator of this session. I'm just a substitute. So thank you so much, Marta, for being with us, despite your connection and your little problem with this. And also Nicola, the former speaker last time, even connected, despite the high level of engagement and tasky life. And I have on my side also the official technician, Glamour. So without his presence, everything would be useless. So keep in mind that there's a group working for you, and you can reward us by participating, and even in the future, because we are planning the 5th edition. So we are looking for volunteers and people engaged in contributing with their own service, but also with a specific experience to share with all the students. And tonight we are 54 attending to this meeting. And so I think that's every time offering to more than 50 people the opportunity to get in depth on such matters. It's a service. So we need you and your experience. That said, I'm still waiting for your questions. No, they are so scared to speak in front of a microphone, I'm afraid. No, apart from jokes, friends, let me remind also for the students enrolled, officially enrolled to the course, that the final test is scheduled on 10th June. The timetable, the precise timetable is not defined at all, but we will inform you timely, not 5 minutes before, I mean. The presentation must be oral, so you have to prepare some 6, 7 slides in form, shape of a little lesson, let's say. So prepare yourself as a next speaker, okay? And friends, once again, thank you to Susanna Ottaviani, to our friends Mario Balzan, that I ran away because it was an airplane waiting for him, not private. And thank you for attending to all these initiatives. See you back next year, really. Goodbye and thank you.